The Bill of Rights. They're basically the Ten Commandments of the United States. And just like the Ten Commandments, most Americans can only name 3 or 4. Let's solve that problem today. So it's summer and it gets pretty warm here, so I took my ferret to the river for the first time the other day. I very quickly learned that he actually likes to swim, but he's not very good at it. So I decided to spend this weekend making him a life preserver. And since I'll be working with my hands during this video, I figured I'd teach you the Bill of Rights using just your hands as well. Whether you're trying to study for a test or you're just looking for a quick and easy way to remember all 10, I learned this trick from Keith Hughes of Hip Hughes History a few years ago. His version didn't have all 10, so I've adapted them over the years. This is just a broad overview of the Bill of Rights and does not include all the little intricacies of each amendment. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started predictably with the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. The First Amendment has 5 freedoms. In fact, that's pretty important. The First Amendment has 5 freedoms: speech, press, religion, petition, and assembly. I discussed freedom of speech in great detail in my last video, so I won't repeat too much of it here. But the main point is, freedom of speech protects you from the government in most cases. It does not protect you from losing your job, being kicked off a team, or being banned from a website. But for the most part, you're okay. The second freedom, press, is pretty straightforward. Here in the United States, we have no state-run news agency. This seems pretty safe, right? I'm not going to cut into the leather or anything. Anyway, even free countries in Europe have channels that are controlled by the government, most famously the BBC. They're still granted a wide berth when it comes to the freedom of what they can report. But here in the United States, the government is not allowed to dictate what is and is not printed. Measure once, cut once. There are very few examples of this, but they usually relate to immediate national security. The most recent example I can think of is the raid on the Osama bin Laden compound. The media knew about the raid well before they broadcasted it, but at the request of the government, they withheld that information since one of the helicopters had crashed, and broadcasting that might put the men on the ground in more danger. This is typically called embargoing a news story. This might end up being an entire video topic in itself, but freedom of religion has 2 parts, often forgotten by those who teach these rights. The first part, freedom from religion, comes from the Establishment Clause, which is also the basis for separation of church and state. This is why hanging the 10 Commandments in your courthouse is usually looked down upon, and why having a nativity scene on your city hall lawn is usually protested. It's also why the United States is under no threat of Sharia law. The second part of the religious freedom section is the Free Exercise Clause. This is the one that everyone remembers. There's no laws restricting what religion you can belong to or which one you practice. But like speech, that doesn't mean you can refuse to do your job or your homework because it's against your religion. It's not some invincibility cloak you can cover yourself with whenever you have to do something you don't want to. It's also why a certain presidential candidate's plan to ban an entire religion from entering the country would be completely unconstitutional. In colonial America, if you didn't like something the government was doing, you could write a letter. That would probably be used as wadding in the next musket ball headed your way. But now with the First Amendment, you're guaranteed the right to petition your government when you think they're doing something you don't like. Excuse me. I have some grievances I'd like to redress. The final right, assembly, is pretty obvious. You're allowed to publicly gather and protest whatever it is that you think the government is doing wrong. Unfortunately, there are a lot of rules about when and where you're allowed to do so, which has led many police officers to get into their riot gear and some say abuse their power. Unfortunately, there are way too many examples of this happening, so I can't really cover it all in one video. But please remember, you're allowed to peacefully assemble. Looting and burning cars is not covered by the First Amendment. Alright, so just to recap, the First Amendment has 5 freedoms: speech, press, religion, petition, assembly. It looks like craft day is turning into craft night. Now on to the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, which can also be represented with 2 fingers. 1, 2. Get it? Okay. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment is another one that deserves a video entirely to itself. But basically, we're talking about protecting against Indians on the frontier. They wanted everyone to be ready in case an attack from the Spanish French or Indians came by. We've never mentioned a well-regulated militia was required for the security of a free state. They never actually wanted anyone to be ready to arm a rebellion against the government. That would be silly. What kind of government would want to do that? Really, it's most interesting. Really, what's most interesting is that the Supreme Court didn't decide that the Second Amendment applied to the individual for home defense until 2008. Now to the Third Amendment. Stick with me, this one gets a little weird. No soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war but in a manner to be prescribed by law. So back before independence, British soldiers didn't really have barracks to live in, so they had to live in people's homes. This served a dual purpose, both saving the army money on building barracks, but also keeping the locals in line by having a soldier live in your home. So when it came time for the Americans to write their own rules, that one had to go. But look at the wording of that amendment. No soldier shall be quartered in anyone's house, unless we need to during war? Why even have that part of the amendment? We're not going to allow this to happen unless we need it to happen. What? Why does that make any sense? Fun side note, when the American soldiers were sent over to Britain in order to prepare for the invasion of Europe, the UK had no rules like this, so American soldiers were regularly quartered with British families. So how do you remember this weird one? Well, it's pretty easy. The three-legged soldier. Doesn't matter how you look at it, he's a mutated Fallout soldier, or a soldier with a crutch, or you could just go with the natural truth that is all soldiers are pretty well endowed. No matter how you do it, I guarantee you're never going to forget it. So we've got the vest part that I made and modified yesterday, and now we've got the 3 flotation devices that we've made that'll be sewn in. So naturally, it's time to move on to the Fourth Amendment. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrants shall issue but on probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. The Fourth Amendment is your protection against unreasonable search and seizure. A lot of people interpret this as your right to privacy, however nowhere is that actually written. This protects you against police entering your house or searching your car unless they have a warrant or probable cause. What is probable cause? Someone screaming in the bedroom, or something visible through the window. And I know I'll get a lot of flack from the pothead community, but your drug of choice is very pungent and can be easily detected when you roll your window down. That's also probable cause. The Fourth Amendment has been in the news a lot recently because of the Patriot Act and because of Edward Snowden's exposure of the NSA's warrantless wiretapping program. Not to mention the countless cases across the country of police officers searching and arresting people without probable cause. So it's getting pretty late, so I'm just going to finish up by putting the flotation devices into the slots that I've created. And then I'll sew these up and add some snaps and stuff to it, and you'll get to see it in action next week when I finish the Bill of Rights.